In this video, I discuss how to stretch your money in retirement. Stretch Armstrong, very satisfying. Coming up next on Holy Schmidt.
Holy Schmidt!
The nature of retirement is that you are long on time, and you can use that time to find ways to save money. In fact, when you were working, you were trading your time for money. Now you're going to trade your time for saving money. In this video, we discuss 10 ways to stretch your money in retirement. Some of these are known to you, but reminding you again will help you actually action those items. Others will be brand new and probably something you haven't thought of. All right, let's go. The first is cut down on your utility costs. The most obvious one is programming your thermostat. The fact is, most people don't actually program their thermostat. They set it at one particular temperature and they leave it there day and night, whether they're home or not. And by not using the program feature on your thermostat or not having a programmable thermostat, even worse, you're heating areas or cooling areas that you don't really need to heat or cool. Along those same lines, if you have a fireplace, make sure that you keep the fireplace flue closed. If you have an open flue and it's winter time, you will lose 20 to 30% of your heat up the chimney on average. The reason is, of course, heat rises, and most fireplaces are designed to suck the air out of the room and up through the chimney so that the smoke doesn't get in the house. Next, have an energy audit conducted by your local utility in many cases, or a private firm if your utility doesn't do that. They effectively come in and they look around your home. They use an instrument and they look around your home and they look for changes in heat patterns or cooling patterns. And if it's the middle of the summer and they see heat blotches by doors, for example, they know that you may need to install something on the bottom of your door to keep the heat from coming in, and vice versa in the wintertime. They'll do this all over your home. They'll check the windows. They'll even look at areas where you may need additional insulation. Next, and I'm sure you have already done this, but for good order, make sure that all of your light bulbs are LED bulbs because those save a lot of money. On average, they are 90% less expensive to operate than a traditional incandescent light bulb. Finally, when your appliances come up for replacement, consider energy efficient appliances. I will say the closer you get to 100% efficient, if there is such a thing, the more the appliance expense costs. And at some point, if you do a cost-benefit ratio, there's no benefit to having something, let's say 95% on the 0 to 100 scale. Now that we're done with utilities, let's talk about DIY or do-it-yourself. With all of this extra time on your hands, you have the opportunity to do some things that you traditionally would outsource. Let me explain. The first is lawn maintenance. Now, a lot of people who are working don't have time to cut their lawn, so they'll pay a professional landscaper to cut the lawn for them. And they'll pay them $65, $75, $100 a week or more to do the trimming of their lawn. But in retirement, you have a lot of time. And frankly, a lot of people consider landscaping an enjoyable activity and would like to do it themselves. The next category is basic home maintenance and repair. A lot of the work that you outsource during your working years, you can actually do on your own. This includes something as simple as replacing the washer on your spigot, your outside spigot, to something a little bit more complicated like replacing your garbage disposal. Next is washing your car. A lot of people, in fact, I would say most people, don't wash their own car. They'll take it to a car wash and have the car wash do it for them. But that's money saved if you wash your car yourself. The next is tidy up services. Someone who comes into your home and cleans it for you. In retirement, you may not necessarily need or want someone to do that because you now have the time. And of course, cooking, which brings up the next category, eating at home. Eating at home is its own category because the potential for saving money is so high, especially now with skyrocketing food prices. I went out for lunch today with one of my daughters at a local diner. I had a cheeseburger, she had a cheeseburger, neither one of us had fries, and we both had soft drinks. The cost of the bill with tip was $42. This wasn't a five-star restaurant, it was a diner. It was a clean diner, but it was a diner, a local diner. The actual input cost of those 2 meals is probably less than $10 because we're talking about 2 patties, 2 buns, 2 pieces of cheese, and 2 cans of club soda. The actual prep time, by the way, is less than 20 minutes, so we're talking about something that's over 4 times as expensive for very little effort. The next point is go generic on your drugs. If you go generic, you'll save between 30 and 60% on the drugs if you're paying for them yourself, and there is not much of a difference. In fact, there's no difference for the vast majority of people. I will say if you're celiac or you have some other type of allergy, check and make sure that the filler, which is the stuff that's inert, it doesn't cause any reaction in your body, is compliant with your dietary needs. Next is downsizing. Housing represents the single largest category of spending for the vast majority of Americans, whether you're retired or you're working. And you have a lot of really big potential savings. For example, if you downsize, your utility costs, all things being equal, will probably go down. If you have a mortgage on a larger house, you may be able to sell that house and pay cash for a smaller house and have no mortgage at all. You can move to a less expensive community where your tax dollars aren't going to support the best schools in the area because you no longer have children of school age, for example. And you may even be able to arbitrage the degradation of your appliances. They may not be ready for replacement this year or even next, but if they're coming up and you buy a smaller place with new appliances, you certainly will extend the life of your refrigerator, your dishwasher, and some of the other appliances that you use on a day-to-day basis. Another advantage outside of savings is you may be able to lead a more spontaneous life. This is particularly true if you're moving from a house to a condominium where you don't necessarily have to run the upkeep of the outside of the unit. Sometimes, however, you don't want to move and you might have a nice sized house with extra bedrooms and you can rent out those bedrooms. You get income from the tenant, of course, but you also get potential tax savings because now your home, at least potentially anyway, has some depreciation that you can claim that you couldn't claim before when it wasn't a business. The same thing is true with maintenance and repairs. A portion of those can be used as a tax deduction. And then there's your utility costs. You need to pay those anyway, so you might as well get a tax deduction. Of course, speak with a tax accountant if you want to set up your home as a business where you rent out rooms, and they'll show you the best way forward on how to do what it is we're talking about. A non-monetary benefit might include the fact that you get to meet new people, and if you get lonely at night, now you have somebody around, potentially anyway, to talk to. Of course, there is a downside or a potential downside to renting out rooms. The first is you may not actually like that person and don't want to be around them. The second is that you can't walk out into the common areas if you give them access to the common areas like the kitchen or the family room in your pajamas or worse. The last 2 points to consider is that some tenants may be unreliable and you have to chase them to pay their rent. And if you are running this as a business, your insurance costs might go up. The next point is to establish and stick to a budget. We talk about this a lot. When you're working, it's very easy to wing it when it comes to a budget. This is particularly true if you make a nice income. In fact, and it still boggles my mind, 2/3 of households in the United States do not run the household using a budget. I suppose philosophically it freaks some people out because having a budget implies that you may be living with want in your life, that you're foregoing things that you shouldn't have to forego simply because it doesn't fit within the scope of what you're prepared to pay that month. But in many cases, maybe even most cases, nothing could be further from the truth. Let me explain. A few weeks ago, I created a video on how to use a free retirement budget Excel download. By the way, if you haven't downloaded it, I'll put a link at the end of this video so that you can go to that video and download the free Excel template. No strings attached, no email necessary. But I digress. Now, I am the king of budgeting. I've never met a dollar that I didn't like. And so I'm really good at knowing where the funds flow in our home. But in completing the download and putting in my own financial information to make sure that it worked, I discovered something that I had not discovered before, despite the fact that I focus in on budgeting. Over the last 24 months, my utility costs had gone up more than the actual input costs. Now, I already have programmable thermostats, but the kids were in and out of the house over the last 24 months, more in than out, frankly. and those programmable thermostats would sometimes get reset. Now, I wasn't going to fight it. If somebody wanted to keep the heat on while they were in a particular zone, that was absolutely fine. But what I found was that they were reset to a stagnant temperature even when they weren't there. And I would reset it back to the original settings. Then I thought about it more deeply, and I thought, what if I buy the Nest Learning Thermostat that monitors and learns people's movements? So I did, one for each zone of the house. In fact, I bought 4 of them this last week, and I'm going to be installing these later this week before the end of the year. I'll report back on my view of the savings in a later video. Next is taking downsizing to the next level, and that's actually leaving the country to a less expensive place to live. Let me explain. There are wonderful places like Portugal, for example, that are far less expensive to live and have a better quality of life, all things being equal. For example, there's a measure called the Global Peace Index. The index looks at things like societal safety and security, ongoing domestic and international conflict, and the degree of militarization of a country. In 2023, Portugal is ranked number 7 in the world in the Global Peace Index. The United States is ranked 131, right behind Brazil and right in front of South Africa. Number 1 is Iceland, by the way. Something to think about. Number 9 is waiting to draw on Social Security to a point later than when you become eligible. If you wait to draw on Social Security, and let's assume that you continue to work, you're not drawing from your retirement assets. So it's a 1-2 punch. You're not drawing from your retirement assets. They continue to grow, and your Social Security payment grows between 6 and 8% per year for every year that you wait past age 62 in most cases. Yes, you will have fewer payments because you waited, but your cash flow in each of the years ahead is going to be larger from Social Security. The next point, number 10, sell what you don't need. If you have something of value that you're not using, if you sell it, you'll get cash flow coming in. Even if it's a modest amount compared to what you paid for it originally, that's still better than putting it in your basement and never seeing it again or throwing it out, worse yet. This has the added benefit of decluttering your home, which helps you declutter your mind. There are a lot of places where you can sell the things of value that you're not using anymore. The most common place is eBay, of course. There's a new one called Mercari, which is a Japanese equivalent of eBay. It was formed in 2013. It found its way here to the United States several years ago, and people seem to really like it. There are others. One is called OfferUp, which bills itself as a simpler way to sell local and buy local. So there's not a lot of shipping involved, or if it is, it's right around the corner, not across the country. If you have a favorite way to stretch your retirement dollars that wasn't listed here, put it in the comments section below so that others can learn from your wisdom. Also, don't forget to check out that video on how to download and use my free retirement Excel budget template. This is Jeff Schmidt. Thanks for watching.